Kevin Becerra, can you introduce yourself to this lovely Substack community?
Yes, hello, Substack community. My name is Kevin Becerra. I use he, him pronouns. I am a curator and a producer. Sometimes, for a very close friend, I'll be a dramaturg. I'm a facilitator. I'm a community gardener. I'm an eighth generation Californian living in exile in Boston, Massachusetts. And yeah, I hang out with artists and introduce people to their work.
Wow. How's the garden right now?
The garden and I had a really good talk over the weekend. I had been kind of absent from the garden, so there was some tall grass happening in the place where flowers were supposed to be. So we got kind of on the same page. And then I will tell you that I got into a real fight with a turkey who pulled up my marigolds.
A wild turkey just chilling in Boston?
Oh, turkeys. Turkeys are out of control in the city of Boston. They run this city, and in my community garden, I mean, there's no scaring them. There's no like shooing them away. This turkey was just like eating someone's kale and making dead eye contact with me, being like, "Do you see what I did to your marigolds? Yeah, I did that. That was me."
They sound like gentrifiers.
They truly, they are gentrifiers. They are mob bosses. They are the natural world is not fucking around. So
All
that's
right. Free Thanksgiving. Uh Upsetting all vegans. What is liberation? Out the gate.
out the gate. What is liberation? Liberation is off the dome. It is unedited, unyielding joy.
Wow. Unedited, unyielding joy. So unyielding meaning endless.
Like,
Like
yeah,
the river. It's just going. No
it's
climb,
just going.
just full of joy. What
Yeah.
uh unedited means you can only, I'm asking more than saying, you can only achieve it if you are unedited or it is unedited.
I think it is like without, not that it's without analysis, but it's without, this is like, it's a very me definition. I feel like the thing that gets in between me and a version of liberation a lot is my like editing for a thing, editing for the room I'm in, editing for whom I'm talking to. I feel like a lot of us edit different versions of ourselves, right? And so it is like free of that, and then it is limitless. It is like the river flows forever because it is unyielding. The river is like happening, and there's no like dam made by beaver or man to like pause the river or like, you know what I mean? It just like is.
Yeah, unedited is great. It's great because I think when I'm suffering the most, it's when my mind is just so loud.
Mm-hmm.
It just can't be quiet. I hear it. It's so quiet. And I think when I'm most peaceful, it's unedited. Like in Tibetan Buddhism, they call it Mahamudra. And Mahamudra says uh the great seal of completion. Like if for one moment you stopped trying to raise the volume here, lower the volume here, change the color here, change the channel here. Like you're always editing, is what Mahamudra says. You're like always trying to just tweak it a little bit to make it right for you. But if you stop tweaking it for 1 second, you'd be free. And that's the work, to stop editing.
Yeah.
And so I relate it to I want to relate it to curation. Isn't your job to edit?
Yeah. Well, I think my job is to be aware of when I'm editing and why, right? Like, you know, there was a show that I was a part of curating that I was not a fan of. It was not your show. But there was a show that I was a part of curating that I just really didn't think was it. I thought that the show was seeking one thing, but kind of achieving something else, and was fine, but um, not as successful as I thought it could be. And the show was a complete hit and was one of those like people coming up to you in the lobby, tears in their eyes, being like, I'm a different person. I thought I hated theater. I didn't know that it could be like this. And that in my role as a curator in that instance was actually to edit myself, was to edit my impulse to edit. And I mean, I guess you could follow that way of thinking forever, right? So if you were to stop the editing, it is a form of editing. Like I think it's that awareness. Um, I am always trying to question my own kind of sense of expertise, that, and remember that I'm not curating for me. I'm curating for a group of people with a really vast sense of tastes. And my job is to sometimes hit what I think is right in the middle of that, and sometimes hit an edge of that. There's been shows that I've done that have really hit an audience's kind of aesthetic edge. And so I think that is good editing, where you're like, okay, you're comfortable in this space. Let's push it a little and see how far we can take it.
Curating is like a form of edging.
I have no comment. But like sometimes, and then it's like, and then it's just knowing that I'm wrong a lot, and that my instincts are wrong a lot. There have been shows that I'm like, this is literally the best show I've ever seen, and like 20 tickets sell to like to like a 2-week run, and I'm like, well, I liked it, so.
Well, isn't that's different between as an artist or someone who makes art, selling the product is different than the thing itself. Like, it might be dope, but maybe you and the team couldn't sell the dopeness, right? And that's like where we as artists and institutions are in our own battle for liberation. People need to make you need to make product, which I feel like can be in line with art. So maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think my most liberated curator self is actually not directly involved in the selling. That like really there are people who are marketers who do that. My addition and sometimes intervention, I think, is in the matchmaking. This piece does this thing, and I believe there are people in my community who can receive that and take it further, or be challenged by it, or be inspired by it. And so I kind of live in that space of the possibility of the connection. And of course I work closely with people whose work is in the selling to help inform. And there have been times when I've been really successful in what that looks like, in helping that translation happen. And there have been times when I haven't. I think there is a tension as artists and institution work together, where it is like, oh yes, your show, artist, is brilliant. I see exactly what you're doing. I see you challenging your past work. I see you growing. I see you asking amazing questions. And I know that we are not the best container for it, that these communities that we have in our audience, and even the communities that we are growing, that we are inviting in, aren't quite at a place. This is curating in Boston. It's like, there are inevitably some people here, but I don't think we have relationship with critical mass of people for you to find success in your art and for them to find it. And so like, that's an interesting thing, right? When like, for the health of the artist and the institution, sometimes the answer is no. And that's I don't know how I got here, but that's like a sticky investment actually in artists and institution finding liberation together, is to say, not this one. Because it always just feels like personal. It's like, I don't like the piece. It's like, actually, I don't know if we can really make the piece fly in the way that you want it to.
You consider yourself an artist?
Yeah, I sometimes. I mean, like, I mean, like there are times when, so like in those rare instances where I'm working with somebody as a dramaturg and I'm like sitting with a director playwright and we're like restitching the thing, you know, like I have, this is actually my dramaturg notebook right here next to me. It hasn't moved in a while, but like I if I can get in that zone where I stop producing the thing and I actually get into the making of it, that's yeah. And that feels different enough to me where I can acknowledge artistry and artistic intention and artistic impulses in curation and producing, but they are pretty, the river flows a little easier when you're in the impulse of making than when you're in the kind of tactics of matchmaking.
For better or worse, being an artist is a big part of my identity. Like it's a, for better or worse, meaning, cross to bear makes me do stupid things. Makes me make beautiful things. I think about being an artist a lot. I think about artists in relation to liberation. I think about how when a dictator takes over, like one of the first people to go or get, banished from society or the artist because they have profound power. How does an artist, like if you were to dramaturg curate someone's life towards liberation, specifically an artist, how would an artist get liberated?
I think an artist
Here, I'll give a
is,
little more context. Is like, I also think we make the algorithm and all of the shit. Like, I read a book recently that was talking about how you can find the same coffee shop in every single city in the world because Instagram has like homogenized our what coffee shop is, what this is, what cool place is. It's just like you think you're being original, but really you're just fitting the mold. And I imagine that for me, an artist liberation is breaking away from that mold that you might not even know you're plugged into.
yeah, that's interesting. That reminds me, there's the New York Times did a 25 best restaurants in Boston list. You sent it to me, and there's a restaurant on that list that has two locations, and one is really pretty and one is really basic, and they recommend the really pretty one, but people in the know that the pretty one has less good food,
Oh,
like
interesting.
like the kind of further out, kind of more basic one has spectacular food. And it's like interesting, right? That like the algorithm and the everything points at like the thing that is Instagrammable, the thing that you like, and that you will tag the New York Times and say, oh, I followed the recommendation and look at this beautiful room that I'm in and it photographs so well, versus like this is like fluorescent lighting and but the food is amazing. Yeah, so I think it relates back to your previous question about the kind of tension between buyer and maker. Um, and like art has to live in that place, but it also really, art and artists suffer in that space. I think what I've been most inspired by, so for a bit of context, I have worked for the last 10 years in international presenting. So less like I found a script and we hire a director and we hire actors and we do the thing, and more like ensembles that are touring internationally. And I think what I am continually inspired by in the artists that I've worked with is that they're not people that waited to be produced. They're people that made. They are like a group of friends from a community or a school or whatever. The acrobats especially, they meet in school, they train on teeterboard with a partner, and they will perform with that person for the rest of their career. And they are gigging in. You try to work with Cirque du Soleil or Seven Fingers or whoever. And then sometimes they just go off and make their own thing. And I think it's that lack of when an artist is not waiting for permission, when an artist is not waiting to be chosen, but an artist is following their creative impulse to create, which I think is different than make. Like when they like, in a lot of French speaking countries, that the rehearsal process is translated to creation. We're in creation, which I love. Like it feels so different than like we've got 3.5 weeks of an equity allotted 40-hour week, you know, like to make this production of Merry Wives of Windsor happen, or else, or else we can't sell the tickets and opening night is announced. And, you know, and I just think when an artist has permission from themselves to create what they want in the timeline that they want, the work is more liberated, and then the audience can find more inspiration and depth and liberation in it. Another quick tangent, but similar thing is that I was working with American poet, essayist, and all-around genius Claudia Rankine when she was making a play that we produced called The White Card, and we were in development, creation, some might say, and she was really having trouble finding the end of the play. And she was like, this is so weird. Like, what? I don't know how the play ends. And I don't know that I'm going to know by this announced opening night date. And she was just thinking about how when it's a book of poetry that she's working on, she just puts it away and walks away from it for a while. And then she says, oh, Citizen ends like this. And she pulls the book back out and writes the end. And then it's what she intends. And she takes the time that she needs, but in this different medium that is so built around a market. She doesn't have the luxury of that time to figure it out. She did find an ending, and it was a beautiful ending. But I was really struck in that moment to hear an artist who's used to working in a different way say, oh, actually, this isn't the container that I need to find the true resolution to this piece of art. So let me just kind of, for now, come up with a thing and hope that we find it in rehearsal, which she did, thankfully.
I know an artist. You know this artist, actually. I won't say their name, but you hung out with them. And this person was an artist for a long time, doing like gigging, creating, but like the hustle, and I got to make something, and I got a kid, and all of this, and then he got a job. They got like a real job that paid good money, and I think a lot of artists would be like, it's soul sucking, but her response was, now that I'm not thinking about who's gonna buy it or make it or hire me, I feel like I'm being more creative. Like I'm just making things, and I don't really care who, because I know the finances that are coming in. Uh, I know that I'll eat. I know that my kid is good. I know that our home is paid for, and that unlocked her creativity in a new way. I don't think that is for everyone, but I think there is something to be said about. I just read an article about time poverty. Time poverty is like the idea that because you have to do so much to cover your basic needs, you are time poor. You don't have time to do the other things, the hobbies. And I think an artist's greatest asset is time. Time to walk away, right? Like Claudia did, and then say, that's the ending. Time to percolate, time to be bored, time to like read something else, time to be frustrated. And I think when you leave school now, assuming you go to school or whatever, just rent, like you live in a city like LA and you have to pay an obscene amount of rent. You're like, I gotta work. I got the time to just imagine. I gotta go like get a job. What what can we tell young artists who have time poverty, who are just trying to like both be artists but also pay their rent?
I'm in a real time is abundant era. I I have what I think is quite a healthy relationship with death. I know that it's coming for me and that we will hang out for a very long time when the time comes. But I do not feel a racing clock against death. This is not what your podcast is about. But I
Oh
don't
no, death is pretty liberating. Yeah, it is. Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
don't feel, I guess my advice is like there is time. Like you are in a hustle moment. You are in a time poor moment now. This does not define your life. Your life will not be time poor. That like every era of your life, if there's anything Taylor Swift taught us, it's that every era in your life is just building to the next era. And then at one point you can make $1 billion looking back at all of them together. Um, you know who's not time poor is somebody who asked for 3.5 hours on a given night for you to hear about the last 15 years of her life. Anyway, like I just think like, yeah, there are moments of hustle, there are moments of grind, and they don't feel particularly creative and they don't feel particularly joyful. And I think it's important to hold that it will not be the moment forever. It cannot be the moment forever. You will burn out. You will stop. Like you will change your circumstances and you'll make more time. And maybe, hopefully, you can do that with intention. Hopefully, people I hear love boundaries. Hopefully you can like find one of those. I'm still looking and make a little time for yourself. But like I have a friend who's a facilitator and a coach and a certified genius. And like what he does is that he has a shadow calendar where he maps out a week of how he ideally would like to spend his time. On Wednesday night, he would love to work out. On Thursday morning, he would love to call a family member. On Saturday afternoon, he would love to read for a few hours. And he like sets the intention for how his time would be managed or be spent if, you know, the world were his. And then the meetings land and the work stuff happens and people cancel and whatever, but he can look over time and say, okay, this is how I wanted to spend my time. This is how I did spend my time. Where are they aligned? Where are they not? And how do I actually do better about that moving forward?
The shadow calendar. What a term.
Oh,
The shadow calendar.
look, he's wild.
I think that relates to like the most common thing I think about, which is part of like I think the dharmic practice of mine, which is like this is who we are, this is who we want to be, and we're trying to get them to meet, and that liberation is in the meeting of where you currently exist, what you desire, but also then after you meet, you gotta like let that disappear. You know, a little tiny death, a baby death. Can you tell me more about healthy relationship to death? Because yeah, that is liberation. Everybody's gonna die. That's real. Like,
Yeah.
you know, in Tibetan Buddhism, that you're not living, you're actually dying. And so they ask the question is, how do you want to die? Peacefully, or grasping and hanging on and desiring more and needing more? Uh, you know, like they want us to die well. And each moment is an opportunity to practice dying well. And so, what is your healthy relationship to death? Is it just knowing, like, oh, I'm gonna die, like YOLO, or I'm gonna die, you know, fuck it, or what is your, yeah?
I guess I have like a pretty um I have a pretty healthy relationship with well, I have a relatively healthy relationship with ancestors.
Mm.
And I think that I am I'm aware of in some ways like death being a portal or a transition, right? Than a hard stopping place. And I think that helps my healthy relationship to death. Um, I think, you know, I love like, yeah, I guess I have a pretty Mexican thought about death. Like I as somebody who works in stories, who loves stories, like I feel the legacy of the stories we pass on and the impact that we make in people's lives. It, it is a kind of continuity that doesn't feel like an ending to me. And so it feels like, yeah, you know, so there are a bunch of members, generations of my family buried in this one cemetery in Santa Paula, California. And it's every time I go home, I walk with my mom through the cemetery and she shows me where everyone is so that and then she shows me where her plot is so that when she's in that plot, I'll know where to find my great grandmother or my great great
Mm.
grandmother. And I'll remember that 2 plots down and 1 down is my grandma's cousin who like had this crazy thing happen. And that over there by the fence are the unmarked graves for children married out of wedlock or born out of wedlock. And there's a few of those who like we got to remember their names because they're literally, you know, because it was the 50s or the 40s and unmarked graves. Like, and it feels like you're a part of this tapestry as a living person, or I guess in Tibetan Buddhism, a dying person. And like you just are stitched into that tapestry differently. And like somebody else, you know what I mean? Like you just become the other. I'm standing in this park essentially with all these people. And at some point, I'll just be on the other side of the park
Hmm.
with them. Do you know?
Hmm. I do know. Yeah. I don't have it in that way. I kind of wish I did. I don't really know like much about my family or who my family is, or my mother didn't know her father, and uh but I was just in Colombia with my mother, and I could feel her own love of being home. That's where she was born when she left. And honestly, I think my parents are going to move there. Like there's something about this is where I'm from. I think that ancestral wisdom is true. I think being closer to something our blood knows is true. I don't know it so much on a personal level. It's something I've opened my heart to in the last couple of years. But I saw it in my mother, and like when she got back to Miami, she went to the consulate like the next day to like figure out how to get her Colombian passport back because she became a U.S. citizen and she had to give up her passport and all of this. And really, I mean, something changed in her kind of drastically and overnight. I think she saw herself in that, and it reminded her to be alive in a different way. So yeah, I
Yeah.
don't
I
know,
mean,
man.
I think connection to place, you know, so all those people that are buried in that cemetery, they all came from other places, right? They came from northern and central Mexico. They came from, you know, the south. They came from the east. They came from wherever they found their way. And the family story is wild. The family story, like Ryan Murphy wishes with the family story. Like it is a crazy FX series. Um, and like I'm really inspired that a super matriarchal family found made that sense of belonging in this place that was new to most to them. You know what I mean? And like, you know, I was just referencing last night, Joan Didion has this great book called Where I Was From about like who California belongs to. And that's obviously an insane question. Like, but like she talks about how whatever, some author thinks that like California belongs to the pioneers that earned it. And it's like that's obviously a crazy thing to say, or like a totally wild thing to say. And like here's a group of people whose names only the family knows, who like don't have a big thing, but they made it so that when I am there, I am as rooted as I more rooted than when I am like where my dad lives in Mexico, where like like multi-generationally, like hundreds, if not thousands of years that my family has been in this part of Mexico. There is a kind of beauty to it. There is a kind of home feeling. There's a familiarity. There are threads of culture kind of blown up. Like, oh, this is where this comes from? This is why we do this? This is why blah, blah, blah. Oh, this is crazy. This is all rooted to a place. My mom's family made that in a foreign land. And I'm so grateful for it. I find it so grounding. And I find a real peace. That distance between who I am and who I think I am or who I want to be is a little closer when I'm in the home that they made, you know?
The ancestral mathematics are something that I think if you sat with, if most people took a sec to like close their eyes and think about the millions and millions of people and things that had to go right, even if they went wrong, they kind of went right in order for you to be here. Uh, like the amount of joy, the amount of suffering, the amount of connections, the amount of like I went left when I could have gone right. Uh, the amount of work, the amount of labor, the amount of wisdom, the amount of blood. I mean, it's just kind of wild uh, to conceive of, and I like to do this. There's this meditation in the practice, which is like you start to dissolve, Like you start with like your hair follicles, piece, your flesh, piece, or you like dissolve as much as you can. Um, because it's like they talk about abundance. Like most people think abundance is things coming to you, but your vessel is actually quite small. So if you got rid of your vessel, that's abundance. Like now, now you're part of everything, and then you start to go back in time. Like you cover the earth, go to ancestors. It's a trip. When it works, it works. It's pretty cool.
That's
Um,
amazing. I think to like loop it back a little bit, like I think that acknowledging how much happened in the exact perfect way to make you, to make a moment, to make anything is like real argument for a little less editing, for a kind of
mm.
trusting
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
how things happen. Because look, I mean, I'm in that age where all my friends are having babies. And it is like a miracle. I mean, somebody that I know wrote a children's book about it, but it is like a miracle that a baby happens. It's crazy. There are so many reasons for it not to happen. There's so
Yeah.
many reasons where it can go wrong. And the fact that so often it goes not only right, but goes perfectly is like true reason enough to be like, okay, this morning I made a breakfast salad instead of my regular breakfast taco. I don't know. Anything is a breakfast. Before you ask, anything is a breakfast, anything if you put an egg on it.
That's what's gonna be on my tombstone. That's what I always say. Put an egg on it.
Hydrate or dihydrate and put an egg on it. It's a double tombstone, but it's just you.
Feels right.
Um, you and your water bottle.
I'm not even there though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because of your sky burial.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there is, there can be, I think we can all afford a little more surrender, knowing that generally things are going in a way that who knows if it's good or bad. I mean, my thoughts on the void are that it's aggressively neutral. Like, but things are going and we will find joy in them. We will find good will come of it, you know, as it kind of, as we just flow.
As we edit less. I think that's it. That's the theme. That's the wisdom. Edit less. Just live your life. And I think that's all that the Dharma is asking of us. Like, just live your life. Like you miss out on so much of your life because you're trying to live your life, or you're trying to get it right, or you're trying to solve it. And all it asks is that you live it. Like it's not about happiness. It's not even about peace. But coincidentally, if you just live your life, you will likely be happier and more peaceful. Any questions for me?
As so as someone who's gone through some artistic editing with you, I find you very game to kind of play around in what if we move this, what if we cut this, what if we add this, how does this all piece together? And I guess my question is, where do you, what makes that possible for you as an artist? What makes editing kind of as fluid as I've experienced it in you? And well, yeah. And is there joy in it?
In art making, there's tremendous joy. Like in the making of art, like I love nothing more than being in a room with other artists and listening. Like I know you talked about rehearsing as creating, but I always have listened to it as rehearing. Like I can always rehear. I think one of my greater skills as a person in this life, not just as an artist, is like I like listening to the world, to life, um, to people, to my work, to re-meeting it like over and over. Some sort of beginner's mind tactic. I think for again, it's not for better or worse. It's just for better. Like the reason the dharmic sort of engaged liberation practice speaks so much to me in Buddhism is the same reason art speaks to me. They're just about this non-editing process. Like the editing isn't even editing, it's just listening properly. And the listening demands what's next. Like, oh, this is needed because I listened. I'm not attached to this. Uh, and so like editing isn't that doesn't mean you're wrong. Like I love editors. You know how many like my book doesn't exist without these two brilliant editors who worked on it. Like none of my great essays exist. You know, nothing I've ever published exists without someone's eye who was like, uh, it's this, not this, and being like, oh yeah, it's tight. I'm glad you see what I can't see. Like I love an outside eye so much. I think a lot of young artists don't make work because they want it to be perfect. Um, and then the greatest advice I can give anyone making something is like just get the shit draft out of the way. Just like do it. Finish the thing and then invite smart people to put their eyes on it and then learn how to listen. And that process is pretty easy. Like people spend forever wanting to make this perfect thing. And it's like just write the trash. Like just get the heart of it out. Um so I think that's it. Like I think it's just in the listening. I enjoy listening. Because when I'm listening, my mind is not loud, like I talked about at the beginning. That's me talking. It's just like shut up, shut it. But when I'm listening, there's peace. Um, yeah.
That's interesting that to you artistically, book, performance, whatever, it's interesting that the editing is linked to you in a collaborative process,
Oh
and
yeah.
that your joy is coming in other people, like in that shared work with other people. That's interesting. It's not super surprising, but it's like it's yeah, that's cool to think about.
And so much of my work is solo performance, you know, which speaks probably to some other selfish thing of me. But I don't put it up myself, you know, I need other people. And I think that's just true. Like, we need other people. Like, we need other people. Even when you're fighting someone, you need them to feel validated in your opinion. So instead of fighting them, you should thank them because they're giving you something to fight about. You know, like you need them to argue. That's like an inherent truth of the world. It's not just spiritual, it's physics. Like I need you. I need this. I need this tree. I need this atom. I need this sickness. I need you. Uh in order to give me the story of me. And so when I make art, it's easier to bow down and listen because I know I need them. Um and I also need my audience. I need my readers. Like it doesn't exist without them.
I
And
love
that's when I say, subscribe. You know,
that.
I need you.
I need you to smash that subscribe button.
Yeah.
Add me in your top 8 on MySpace. Wow. Yeah, that was beautiful. I'm gonna think about that a lot today.
Anything else?
No, this is really lovely. This is really, yeah, it's good to take time in the day to answer big questions. There, that same person who does the shadow calendar used to do this thing called Big Talks, where you would bring somebody who'd never been to a big talk before. And it was a small group, like 8 people. And you'd sit around a giant piece of butcher paper with like some wine, some tea, whatever, little snackies. And then they would put a big question on the butcher paper in the middle of the table. Like the one I remember the most is what's the use of cities? And then like you and maybe some people you know, but a lot of people you don't know sit around and just like you skip the like, how's your day? And you go into like cities are essential because of, or cities hold the possibility of, and to me,
All the time we used to do, what is it, symposiums or not symposiums? What are those like? All those philosophers used to just hang out in rooms, you know, and talk about shit.
yeah,
And part of that is anti this idea of more and capitalism. And it was just about the exploration, not the answer. Like the question is more important than the answer.
and the bumping your ideas against somebody else's,
Hmm.
right? Which is different than like, you know, like it's different than making a video that you post on the internet where you're talking to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
you know, like, or you're just talking about your hot take. It's like different to sit with somebody and be like, especially to sit, you know, like with somebody that you're in relationship with and be like, what is this? And you're like, oh, I don't know. What is
Where
liberation?
is this big think man?
It's
Where is he?
where is he? He's around.
Yeah.
Uh,
Connect him. Get him on the line. Let's
yeah,
have him
no,
on.
honestly, he because keeping true to his shadow calendar, he books hangouts like 4 months in advance. So when I see him in December on a date that we scheduled in July, I will send him this, by the way, when you share it, and he will laugh. But I'll talk to him about connecting you all, because I think you two would actually really love each other.
Sick. I'll chat with him in 6 months.
That's right.
Beautiful. Anything else?
That's it. You're the best.
You're the best. I appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.